Welcome back to the Sideline Live podcast. You can follow us over on Twitter and Instagram at the Sideline Live. We'd love to hear from you. On episode 58, I'm delighted to be joined by former professional soccer player and Kildare GAA star Kevin Feely. On this episode we discuss his career, mastering the high catch, motivation, practical tips as an inter-county footballer, individual skills and practice, and so much more. I hope you enjoy. Hi Kevin, thanks a million for joining me on the podcast.
No problem at all, Orla. Thanks for having me.
I was doing a bit of research and actually only found this out today. You actually were born in Brussels and you grew up there and you speak French, is it?
No, the French is a bit rusty now at this stage, but I lived there till I was 8, and did speak French at the time, but within about a year moving to Ireland, I totally forgot it all and struggled through me leaving cert French in the end. So it didn't stand me too well, unfortunately.
So you moved to Waterford and you grew up there. Gaelic football wasn't really the priority growing up.
No, it wasn't. Obviously Waterford wouldn't be a Gaelic football stronghold. Although the club I was playing with, Chamor, would have had a decent team, but I was all about the soccer and hurling early on, and a million other sports as well. Actually, growing up, I would have played so much like GAA soccer, tennis, basketball, athletics, everything. Everything got a bit of a go. But I suppose from a priority point of view, it was soccer and hurling were definitely the top two, I think.
Okay, what stood out for those two sports apart from the other 7,000 you were doing at the time?
Yeah, good question. No, I think if I was being honest, soccer was the main one. I don't know. I'd always wanted to be a professional soccer player from as soon as I could kick a ball. That was kind of the direction I was guided down by the parents as well, and just was a mad Man United fan, and soccer would have been the first love definitely for a while. And obviously being in Belgium, I wouldn't have been exposed to GAA really when I was younger either. So soccer is their kind of national sport over there as well. So just kind of transferred over when I moved to Waterford then. But GAA kind of got its grips into me then after that.
And growing up, was there any particular coach from any of the sports that you played that kind of had a big impact on you, and you kind of look back and you say, God, they really, maybe I didn't know at the time, but looking back, they really got a good influence on me?
That's a good question, actually. I've never thought that one through that much.
I'm putting you on the spot now.
Yeah, on the spot a little bit, but I don't know. I suppose underage, I don't remember too much. I would have had couple of soccer coaches underage that would have kind of I was really lucky, got to play with like a really successful under 11, under 12 team when I was 8. So they didn't have any teams younger than that in the soccer club, and would have been a manager there, Liam O'Rourke, who would have kind of brought me in when I was like very young and shy or whatever, and let me play under 11s with his team, and they were absolutely deadly. So I kind of learned loads from playing with that older team, and then after that it was just the coaches I remember most would be the kind of the football managers at mine, or same person and that with my club, who just had such a massive influence on my own age group of players within that club as well. Just so many of them went on to go on and play senior club for Athy and win stuff with Athy, and he would have been a huge part of that as well. So I don't remember too many coaches early on. But when it got to minor level, guys like Shane Purcell would have had a huge impact on me, all right.
Mm-hmm. I'm conscious of a lot of younger listeners kind of in the secondary school, college range. Talk us through a little bit of your leaving cert and kind of deciding to go down the route you're taking now. I suppose even throughout the leaving cert, I definitely would have had, as much as I was, very focused on school and stuff like that, I still would have had sport as the number one priority, which probably isn't ideal, but I did get the balance. I got the balance pretty fairly well. If I still had big ambitions of going to college, but I think the end goal was to try and become professional football or whatever. But even throughout leaving cert, I would have been playing minor football. I would have been playing under 17 soccer with Belvedere up in Dublin, and then a bit of county minor as well. So there was a lot of kind of travelling and training during the week, but I don't know. I was able to get that balance okay in terms of getting me work done and getting a bit of studying as well. And the course I wanted to do was physiotherapy, I suppose, or athletic therapy at DCU. I would have had all the kind of, I wanted to do something in sport. I knew that for definite. So any of the courses that were kind of some way sport related, like athletic therapy, sports science, physiotherapy. Um, Even I would have had a couple of, I would have had psychology and journalism on the CAO as well, but
Okay.
they would have been a bit further down. But yeah, anything sport related, I had up high, and DCU at the time had a link with Bohemians League of Ireland club, and my age Belvedere team, basically all of us had been signed by Bo's under 20s team, so there was a possibility of kind of getting a half scholarship through Bo's and DCU. So that kind of influenced me putting the DCU courses down as the number one ones. And then just luckily enough, I was able to get enough points to get into athletic therapy. So that was that from an education point of view. I knew I wanted to do something in sport, even though it was just kind of it was more of a backup to trying to be a professional athlete. But I would have always been very strong in making sure that I at least had that backup there if things didn't go well.
Even there, you mentioned that half scholarship. That's something that I think maybe secondary school students forget, that, you know, I can get a scholarship that can reduce my points or can help with financial costs, let's say for accommodation or fees. Like, I think that's something we even remember, and it's great to have that. You had that link with Bohemians. What was it like then going to college and playing with Bows, and how did the opportunity to go to the UK come up?
Yeah, college was great. It was absolutely ideal in that Bohemians were training in Dalymount Park at the time, which is in Kildare, which is like a 5-minute drive from DCU. So it worked out really well that I was able to train part-time with Bows and study full-time in DCU, and also kind of combine that with playing a bit of freshers GAA as well. But in terms of how the UK thing came about, so I did 2 years of playing with Bows, initially with their reserves and under 20s.
Okay.
And then the following year, Bows were under financial pressure at the time, so they didn't really have the budget to be bringing in established players. So a lot of our under 20 and reserve teams ended up becoming the first team in my second year. So we got a really good opportunity to play like senior level football in the League of Ireland. And then throughout that year, I think about in 2012. I just got a run of games, played regularly for Bows, and I think around August, September time, off the back of maybe 30 or so games, a couple of clubs got in touch with Bows, like a couple of clubs in the UK, asking about going over for a couple of trials, and I would have done 3 or 4 day trials with a few clubs in the UK during that time, and then luckily enough, a couple of them offered me contracts, Charlton and Peterborough, and I just ended up saying I'd try and defer the college course for a while and give the soccer a crack in the UK. So I ended up going over to Charlton then.
Very good. How did you find transitioning from, as you said there, from the level of League of Ireland, you're playing under 20, to the UK to be a professional athlete and living that lifestyle?
Yeah, it was a difficult transition, definitely. Especially going from this kind of student lifestyle into full time sport. It was difficult, but as well it was something that I had visualized for so long growing up that it was always going to be the case. That I don't know, it didn't feel like too much of a shock to the system. It was like my absolute dream to be in a position where I was playing sport as my full-time job. So, after the initial kind of settling in period, I just absolutely loved it. Like the idea of training and playing every day and that being your job, and kind of took to it really well from a sporting point of view. Probably took a little bit longer to settle in socially. That's probably something that maybe even at 19 it's tricky, and you probably haven't developed like your emotional maturity yet to do that very well. That took a little bit more time, but from a sporting point of view and a work point of view, I absolutely loved it. The training side of things was brilliant. I was really lucky to have like an outstanding under-21 manager at Charlton. So I wouldn't have been signed as a first team player. I was signed as an under-21 player.
Okay.
And the first year I just played with the under-21s and reserves. And our manager he was absolutely brilliant, Nathan Jones. And he really helped to bring me on as a player and an athlete, and left me in what I thought would have been a really good position going into my second year at Charlton. But yeah, that didn't work out in the second year. But the first year of it, I absolutely loved it. It was initially a tough transition, but once you get used to it, it's every young lad's dream, I think, to be playing professional football.
Yeah, exactly. What were the different methods that he used to help improve you as a player?
Well, in terms of the carrot and stick, it was definitely a lot more stick. He was really big on. No, he did use positive reinforcement when it was, when you did well, kind sometimes, but he just set it like such a high bar of what the standard was, what the minimum standard was in every training session, that if you fell below it, it was really embarrassing.
Okay.
And it's probably not the most modern day approach to coaching in that regard, but
Yeah.
you just knew all about it if you were falling below the barometer that he had set, and he had it kind of ingrained in his team as well that players were to call each other out as well if they felt that the standards were slipping.
Okay.
Yeah, and it meant in every training session that there was definitely a case of like survival of the fittest. Like if you found that approach a bit too strong and you were struggling from a pressure point of view, that you just felt too under pressure coming into training sessions, then maybe that team wasn't for you and you struggled. And initially I would have felt that way. I would think, geez, I'm absolutely dreading going into training here in case I make a mistake. But once you break through that barrier and meet the standard that he has set, it's like such an amazing feeling to have pleased him, because he's such a hard coach to please. That once you did that, and once you became like an established member of his team, and I suppose you felt like you'd earned his respect, it meant the absolute world to you, and your confidence levels just soared because of it. So I think just the standards he set and his style of making sure that he was on your case all the time, that you didn't ever drop below what he expected of our team, and then empowering the players to kind of do similar, it had a huge influence on me. And the results kind of spoke for them. Like we went through that season unbeaten with the under-21 reserves. Like we won every single game.
That just shows there.
And that's it, yeah. And he did mellow out towards the end of the season, like once he kind of got to know us a bit better, and we were obviously we were quite successful. He definitely mellowed out and kind of let us into his own personality a little bit more. But initially, I think that dictator style coaching method was really effective, especially with a group of 18, 19, 20-year-olds. It just seemed to be exactly what we needed at the time. Now, I'm sure with an adult team, that mightn't necessarily work as well, but it was exactly what we needed anyway.
How do you find, it was always your dream to go to be a professional athlete, but how did you find the pressures of it all? Like even there, just maintaining standards, it's your job. I know personally, I know for myself, I would struggle with it because I need multiple, not distractions, but I need multiple avenues in my life. How did you find sport becoming your job rather than, let's say for myself, it would be an outlet from everything else I do?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Personally, I didn't find that too much of a problem in terms of stuff to do outside of the sport. It still remained an outlet for me. The training pitch and the training centre was very much became my comfort zone. Absolutely loved being there. Outside of the pitch, I was really lucky that the digs that the club put me up in Charlton, there was 4 other guys there, all of a very similar age to myself, in the same boat. Kind of, we were playing more or less on the same team and got on really, really well. Socially outside of training, we did loads of things together. Cinema, playing snooker, pool, or the odd night out or whatever. We found it like socially that was great. It probably created a little bubble that I should have worked harder to get out of, if that makes sense. I probably could have been trying to experiment a bit more socially in terms of, I could have taken a lot more trips into London city centre, and done the more touristy stuff. Like I did do a little bit, but
I definitely could have worked harder to make more friends outside of that little comfort zone that I had. But
Mhm.
you know, I was young at the time and coming from a student replicate I just wanted to replicate that as much as possible outside of training, and that's pretty much what I did at Charlton for 2 years. So, integrated fairly well with that, you know, small group of guys, but would have really struggled then to integrate myself into the first team and the senior team. Probably due to a lack of maturity, I just wasn't, you know, ready to kind of expose myself to them and let them know what type of a person I was. But
Yeah.
I in terms of, you know, that being my full-time job, that was never a problem for me, and it was probably made much easier by the fact that I had 4 or 5 close friends there living beside me to socialize with outside of it.
Mm-hmm. How did you find then? You mentioned the first year went really well, the second year maybe less so. What kind of happened? You mentioned there even just trying to break into the first team was a little bit of a struggle there.
Yeah, so into the second year then, after what I thought was a good first season, when I went back for pre-season, I didn't make the first team squad that was going on a pre-season training camp in Spain. When I asked the first team manager about it, he just kind of, you know, not unpleasantly, he just kind of let me know that I wasn't part of his plans for the year ahead, and that would
Okay.
have been a bit of a blow. After like thinking that I'd had a good year,
Mm-hmm.
but I understand now where he was coming from. There was a couple of younger centre backs, maybe a year or two behind me, who definitely had more potential than I had probably to go on and be better players. So I could see where he was coming from, and he just basically told me to try and find a club to go out on loan until my contract ran out at the end of that year. So that would have
Okay.
been, yeah, you know, it would have been a big blow for me at the time,
Yeah.
and maybe didn't react as well to it as I should have, in terms of like, I had a higher opinion of myself than I should have had. I thought I should have been in the first team, but
Yeah.
you know, realistically, when I look back in hindsight at the players around me, you know, he was probably, you know, he probably wasn't too far wrong with it. But it goes to show you as well that, you know, there's a bit of luck involved. If a manager, like, so he didn't sign me, it was the under-21 manager that signed me. So
Yeah.
he had no real attachment to me at all. Like, it was an easy decision for him to make. Whereas
Yeah.
if I had gone to the other club that was involved, Peterborough, they were signing me to go straight into the first team, and that
Okay.
could have gone differently. But I kind of chose Charlton off the back of them being a much more stable club financially. With it, they had a training ground and,
Okay.
you know, a really good history, whereas Peterborough seemed a little bit kind of all over the shop financially. But
Okay.
yeah, so off the back of that, then I tried a couple of clubs on loan and got me first taste of senior football at League One level with Carlisle. And that was a disaster. So I played 3 games there and had an absolute. Well, I did okay in the first game, and then the second and third game just turned into absolute nightmares. So
Okay.
the confidence took a good dent, and then I started thinking about home an awful lot more.
Okay.
Because my own age, Kildare under-21s, they were on a roll and on the way to winning a Leinster Championship. And I was thinking, Jesus, you know, I should be back home doing that or whatever. Now again, I was just catastrophizing because the
Yeah.
immediate situation wasn't very good.
Mm-hmm.
And I started just going through the motions a little bit, basically waiting to run out my contract to go home. But then had a good chat with my dad actually halfway through that season, and he kind of told me to cop on and give it a proper go. And another club came in looking for me, a centre back on loan, Newport County, and I went to them for about the last third of the season and played the last 11 or 12 games with them. And probably because I had taken the pressure off myself and I had kind of accepted that I was going home, I played without really any fear of that, and, you know, ironically played much better in those games than I had done. And then they ended up offering me a contract then for the next 2 years. So after a kind of summer thinking about it, I decided I'd give it a full year or two of trying to play first team football, and I went back to them for that would have been 2014, and I was signed at Newport, and in fairness, absolutely loved my time there. Played for 2 years regularly enough, outside of the odd injury. And like socially, it was a big change from Charlton in that socially I fit in really, really well with the Newport guys.
Okay.
and just found Wales. It's in Wales, and I found it a much more similar place to Ireland, a much nicer place to live, and really enjoyed it from that point of view. But probably came to the realization halfway through that contract that this was probably the maximum level I was capable of playing at with soccer.
Okay.
Whereas I felt like in Gaelic football, I had more potential to achieve a bit more.
Okay.
And then I kind of was also I wanted to finish my college degree as well. And was just, getting phone calls sort of coming back with Kildare, and eventually just the pull of playing football again was a bit too strong. So a couple of years into that Newport contract, I mutually agreed to go home and start up the college again and go back playing football.
Very good. I had a former Donegal senior footballer, Luke Keeney, on, and we were chatting about training load and injury. And from your experience and your qualifications, he made a really good point. His brother plays, and the difference between him and his brother at the same age was his brother had one coach, whereas Luke had, it could have been 4 or 5 managers pulling at him. What do you think? I'm not going to ask you for a solution because that's a podcast in itself. But what can we do in the GAA to stop stories like Luke happening, where players have to retire very early with serious hip or knee injuries?
In fairness, I think the GA are taking some steps to address that already. There's minimum age. You have to be to play at a certain age now, underage. So obviously, I think you have to be 17 to play under 21. You have to be over 15 to play minor. This kind of stuff. That will help. I think they're looking into getting rid of the pre-season competitions at inter-county level, which will help a lot in terms of allowing college players to play college games without the added load of then going playing O'Byrne Cup matches or being forced to put in massive training weeks with their county on top of what they're doing with their college and stuff like that. And I think most county managers in my experience anyway, county managers have always been really accommodating towards anyone who's been in college and just accepted that this is the time when they play Sigerson or they play Fitzgibbon or whatever, and leave them to it. We'll just keep an eye on them until that's finished, and that seems to be coming into the game an awful lot more. What probably needs to change a bit more, maybe at club level in particular, is just the attitude of coaches maybe insisting that players play through certain niggles and certain injuries, or insisting they play through pain. So even in Luke's case, I'm sure his hip pain mightn't have started off as being that bad, and would have gradually gotten worse. But the fact that he was probably felt under pressure to play through a certain amount of pain, wouldn't have helped him. That attitude probably should be looked at in terms of player welfare. Coach has to accept both the medical opinion of the physio or doctor, and also that the player mightn't be, even though they say, "Oh yeah, I'm grand," because they'll obviously want to play. They'll probably have to probe a little bit deeper and find out how badly affected is this guy or girl by their injury, and not be putting them under pressure to play numerous matches through pain.
So you mentioned there you came back to play with Kildare. How was it like coming back to college, back to Kildare? I guess you really did want to play for Kildare, so did you miss the soccer much?
No, weirdly just didn't miss it a bit as much as I really liked it. I didn't miss it at all. It just, the GA just became so all consuming, and I went back into third year of college, so I picked up where I'd left off 3 years previously, and it's probably the most intense semester of the athletic therapy courses, the first semester of third year, and I just had to get straight into that, and that was really intense. And then obviously, with intercounty football being what it is from a time commitment point of view, I didn't have time to be thinking about soccer or to be missing soccer. It was very full on from the minute I started up again. We have to do certain work placements in our course with different teams, and I got put with the DCU soccer team as their athletic therapist on the sideline. And there were times when they were stuck for numbers and I'd tog out for them, but that was literally the only time I played soccer. So since 2015, I haven't played a soccer match or even five-a-side. I'm not for any emotional reason. I literally just hasn't crossed my mind to do that. And
Okay.
just totally fell out of. I wouldn't follow the Premiership anything like that. The most I follow now is League of Ireland, because my brother's in it, and I kind of always have that connection with Bows that I've always wanted them to do well. So
Yeah.
outside of that, I don't have really a huge connection to soccer these days anymore at all.
Do you think that's because you did give it the 100%? Like you went to the UK, you got there, and even you mentioned there previously, you just realised this is probably the maximum I can get. And what sounds like you got a kind of a bit of closure, even kind of going to the UK and being like, right, I did what I said I wanted to do.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I definitely I was glad that I gave it the extra year that my dad kind of convinced me to do, and got the opportunity to play first team football for a period of time.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, I'd say because I kind of left on my own terms rather than not finding a club, that probably helped from a not having too many regrets point of view.
Hmm.
Again, it was probably quite short-sighted thinking when I look back now in hindsight that if I had stuck at it a bit more, and I'd say if I didn't have that option of coming home and playing GAA, I would have been a bit more single-minded about the
Okay.
soccer, and maybe put the head down and kind of built up a bit more belief in myself. But um, yeah, no, I'd say that the fact that I had at least tried it, realized maybe this isn't for me, and left on my own terms, that probably was a big part of the reason that I don't have huge regrets looking back
Hmm.
on it now. Yeah.
To be an intercounty footballer, to be a professional athlete, you need a lot of motivation. And I was chatting to Adrian O'Sullivan, Dublin Camogie coach, and he was made a really good point about kind of like people asking about halftime talks or kind of motivation. He was like, well, to be an intercounty footballer, you don't need me to be screaming at you to do something. You're just going to do it anyway. Where does your motivation come from to be an elite athlete and to be the best player you can be?
Um, I'd say from a young age, it came from always having that end goal in mind. Like I'd never stopped thinking about becoming a professional athlete. So
Okay.
until that happened, I was always going to be motivated in everything I did to achieve that. And that kind of self drive or self motivation came quite naturally to me when I was younger, I think. I'd always try and create someone that needed to be impressed, and like even if it was an imaginary scout on the sideline, or a coach that I really really respected, I wanted him or her to think really highly of me.
Yeah.
um I used to use that tool as a motivating tool all the time. um and that helped me get to a certain point where I used to love trials. I used to love opportunities to have someone to impress, because I found that way of getting up for games or matches really easy. And then I suppose coming into the difficulty I found was maintaining that motivation once I'd achieved a certain goal. So
Okay.
that's probably where I kind of came off the boil a bit. Even at Newport, so I got playing regularly for 10 games, and then would have allowed complacency to sit in, definitely. Um, Expectation of how you're going to play goes up if you've had a few good games early on, and that can be tough to deal with as well. But I know looking back, I definitely let that those motivation levels drop a little bit once I kind of hit a certain point, and then you need to reassess and create some new goals that help to motivate you again. And I've had that issue in GA numerous times, and I'd say it's the same with a lot of intercounty players, that once you get once you get into the thick of an intercounty playing career, the training and matches, if you allow them, can become quite monotonous, and
Okay.
you allow yourself to go through the motions a little bit. So it's important that if you see that kind of complacency creeping in, that you create some new kind of short-term goals to help focus you again, and drive those motivation levels back to where they should be.
Okay, that's really interesting. What sort of goals would you set yourself when you, because like when you say there, that's having really good self awareness of being able to be like, right, you know what, I'm being complacent. So what sort of goals do you set to kind of keep yourself in tuned and motivated?
Yeah, from a training point of view, I try and kind of narrow it down to each session that, um, they're not necessarily realistic. They're more kind of cues for myself to stay switched on, and that,
Okay.
I want, I tell myself, right, well, after this training session, I want everyone to have said
I was the hardest worker at that session, or that my dedication to it couldn't be questioned, or my desire couldn't be questioned. And they're the little things I say to myself to try and they're like the short-term goals that after the session I say, right, how would I rate myself in terms of my desire and intensity during that session? And if I'm happy enough with that, then I know it should look pretty good from the outside as well. In terms of like more measurable goals, it'll be nowadays, you have GPS monitors in a lot of the time. I'll set certain goals that I want to hit from a distance covered and a high intensity meters covered point of view. And then for matches itself, I put a big emphasis then on number of possessions, successful passes, stuff like that. And positive plays, like plays where I'm going forward rather than backwards and stuff. So they're the more measurable goals I'd set myself, but that are quite short term. And then obviously you'd have your longer term stuff that you want to have achieved by the end of the season, which might be something as simple as being fit and ready for every game, or being playing every game. Or you could go higher and say, I want obviously the team to win an Ulster final, and individually I want to be recognised for whatever awards, kind of thing. So there'll be longer term goals that you keep in the back of your mind, but I think it's much more valuable to focus on the short term stuff to stop complacency setting in.
That's brilliant. I really like the way you're speaking about this. Is that something you've ever, did you ever get help kind of with goal setting? Have you sought advice from other people, or?
Yeah, at different stages. I'm sure it's no different to most inter-county teams. They have, I suppose they're called performance coaches now, but would have been called sports psychologists back in the day. And I would have met with, we've had 2 or 3 now at this stage of Kildare. I never would have done any kind of prolonged sessions with them, just the odd meeting, once or twice a year kind of a thing. And definitely would have picked up certain ideas from them. I think the most valuable thing they do is help you create self-awareness of the type of person you are and what motivates you personally. I think that's the biggest value in those guys, is they help you become a more driven person, and definitely would have picked up tips from those people to help kind of develop that side of myself.
You mentioned there a lot of short-term goals and the match goals and the training goals. Do you ever sort of make notes after training, or maybe before after matches?
Not anymore. I used to be very a bit over the top with that.
Right.
A couple of years back, just I thought it was a helpful thing to write down. I used to have like a list of 30 things I wanted to achieve in each match, and it was just
30?
stupid stuff. Well, it was just because I'd be thinking about the match in that much detail that I'd just be spewing stuff down about catches and kicks and tackles and blocks, and I would be going through every side of it. And then after the game, I'd come back and see how many of them I'd hit, and then you might have only ticked 4 of those boxes, and then you're devastated because so it ended up being counterproductive in the end. I used to take notes on opposition players and stuff, but I just found that there was just too many times I was psyching myself out of games just by overthinking it. So I just tried to take a back seat now with that stuff now, and try and approach both club and county games a little bit more relaxed. And I find the less I'm thinking about it before throwing, the more relaxed I am then when the match starts, because I know that physically and mentally I'm going to be prepared. It's impossible not to be when you're training at inter-county level. It happens automatically with the amount of detail that goes into each session. So that's the approach I'm taking these days, is a little bit more laid back.
Okay. And do you have anything particular you would do in a routine before training or matches at all?
No, I've figured out kind of what suits me best from a nutrition point of view now, to try and eat a lot more the day before and then stay a lot lighter with my eating on the actual day. And it's been great to have different nutritionists' advice on that recently. Where a lot of the evidence suggests that what you eat the day before is a lot more important from an energy expenditure point of view. So it takes a lot of the stress off trying to eat loads on the day, because I used to struggle with eating on the day of matches anyway with nerves. So I'd be forcing myself to eat this because I thought I had to, and nearly making yourself too full and feel too sick going into matches. So that was just trial and error and experience learning that
just eat enough that you're not hungry, and don't be feeling under pressure to force feed yourself, kind of thing. And then outside of that, the routine I usually have, I'd have. I'm just mad into the Aussie rules the last couple of years. Just really took a liking to it, and those matches, because of Australian time, tend to be on in the morning in Ireland. So usually on a Saturday or a Sunday there'll be some kind of match, AFL match on. I'll stick that on while I'm having breakfast, chill out, watch that, and then usually go for a walk. About 20-30 minute walk on the day of a match as well. It helps get the legs moving and clear the head, and then onto the match then after that. So that's the kind of routine I've fallen into now, which is a lot more laid back, I think, than it would have used to have been. So, but it seems to be suiting me better from a mental point of view anyway.
When you get to the pitch, is there anything particular you like to do? I know some players kind of look for the goals, or even their thought process going up for the throw in. Is there anything in particular you kind of just say to yourself? What's your self-talk like maybe during a match?
Yeah, during the match I do an awful lot of self-talk. Yeah, beforehand, no, I wouldn't have any huge superstition. I do like to get out on the pitch. That's more so just to get a feel of the wind and what sort of a surface it is, rather than any kind of visualization process. During the match, then I like kind of a mantra I've always lived by to avoid negative thoughts getting into my head is that I'll always try to be, talking out loud. So I'm sure it's really annoying for a majority of my teammates, but I never shut up. But it's hopefully they realize it's more of it's for a selfish point of view rather than it might seem like I'm talking to them and telling them where to go and what to do and stuff like that, but it's a personal thing really. It helps keeps me switched on. It helps. I know if I'm talking to others around me, I'm switched on about my own job as well. And that helps to stop any kind of negative thoughts creeping into your head as well. Because you're constantly staying present and you're staying in whatever that current moment is. So I know that if I'm gone quiet during a game, that's usually a sign that I'm not doing too well, or that I need to do something to change things. So I usually use that as a cue. If I've kind of noticed things have gone quiet, it's usually because I'm not talking and that I've switched off. So I like to use that as a cue to keep myself motivated during games.
Okay, that's really interesting. I've asked a couple of people this question, not particularly GA players, but is the game, as a percentage even, is the game more physical or mental?
That's a good one. Well, there's obviously a minimum physical standards you have to be capable of to play the game at any level, but especially at intercounty level. But in general, at intercounty level, most guys are of a similar physical ability. With the odd exceptions here and there, especially position specific. You're not likely to be marking someone in your position who's overly different to you from a physical attributes point of view. So, then after that, I do think it's more mental, at intercounty level, because as I said, it's a lot more an even keel from a physical point of view. So, I think your belief in yourself and your team and your system and stuff like that become a lot more important than probably the physical side of things at the highest level. So I'd put the 60-40 in favour of mental skills when it comes to intercounty level.
Okay, interesting. I have a lot of coaches listening to the podcast, and I've asked, again, a number of people this question. It's kind of like every podcast I ask it, but what's the most underrated skill or attribute in the game at the moment, do you think? Is there anything we're really overlooking?
That's a great question. Underrated skill in the game. I think Tyrone and Mayo have kind of set a blueprint for Gaelic football anyway. But it's more so like it seems to be a tactical awareness thing more so than any individual skill. They seem to just have an ability to just play totally as a team, like without individuals. Both of Dublin are no different, obviously. But it's so evident when you watch both Tyrone and Mayo that the selflessness of all of them, it kind of screams out at you that none of them seem to be playing for any kind of individual glory. They all seem to buy into this system that the managers put in place for them, and seem to believe that they're capable of carrying it out to the absolute max. For Tyrone in particular, seem to have the conditioning to do that. So I think the most underrated skill is probably selflessness, and creating an environment in your team where the we comes before the I all the time, and then just having that belief in yourself as a player to be able to carry it out to the max ability. So again, I don't think there's any underrated like physical skill in terms of kicking or soloing or high catching. Like I think they're all at that level being performed to a great ability. I think it's more of a tactical awareness and a selflessness seems to be the skill that's getting teams over the line more so these days.
Okay, that's a really interesting answer. I really like that one. Out of interest, with the high catch, I had a note down. I know you did an interview and mentioned it before. For any of the coaches or players that are listening, how do you approach a high catch? Like I know for myself, I have a prompt in my head, like a trigger to help me catch the ball. Is there anything particular with even technique that you've kind of realised over the years that that's something that's really important for me to do, or is it just you don't really think about the high catch anymore? You just go up and get the ball.
It's become a little bit more thoughtless over time, but initially, again, that minor manager I spoke about, Shane Purcell, had this coaching cue of watching the O'Neill sign into your hand. So basically, you're looking to see, can you see the O'Neills writing on the football, and if you have that acute level of focus on something, and you're watching it all the way into your hands, the catch tends to happen quite naturally. And it was something I used to focus on a lot when I was younger. And now I don't have to think about it as much. Now probably the main kind of coaching aspect or a cue that I use for going for a high ball is to I find with a lot of players and myself as well that it's quite a vulnerable position to put yourself in, to jump into a crowd of bodies like that. You're opening yourself up to being hurt basically, and it's a mental challenge to tell yourself to go as hard for the ball as you possibly can. So that's when I know if I'm running towards a catch, if I'm not standing under it, I always tell myself to go hard as possible for this ball, and because you almost feel like someone in the contest won't go as hard as they should because they'll have that little bit of fear of getting hurt. And I always tell myself, right, don't let that be you. Make sure you're the one that goes as hard as possible into the contest. And that usually helps me in terms of getting to the ball first. Obviously, if everyone goes hard for it, it'll just break. But at least you broke even and you didn't let them catch it. So that's what I tend to tell myself anytime I'm jumping for a high ball.
Brilliant. How did you find the water breaks? I don't know if there's a decision being made about next year, but how did you find them as a player?
You're great, yeah. I don't see any issue with them at all.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't. I'm used to them now, and I don't understand why they'd be. Or I haven't read too much about the opposition against them. I don't know any of the argument against it. I don't. Or is it interrupting the flow of play, or I don't see what it does that's negative to the game. It's an opportunity to get water on board, which is important. I'm sure it's helping reduce a lot of cramp that happens during games, and then it's just a quick opportunity to reset as a team. It's only a minute long. I don't see any issue with it at all, to be honest.
Out of interest, when you're watching other teams and players, like you mentioned Tyrone and Mayo, is there anything in particular that you look for in a match? I guess if you're sitting down to watch a match, subconsciously you're going to be picking out things, but is there any time where you sit down and you're like, right, I really want to see if I can pick out certain things here?
Usually I look at the guys in my position that are kind of, I get drawn into doing that, and then I'd be kind of looking at the game and wondering how would I survive in this game? Like would I be okay in this game, or would the pace of it, or would the game style not suit me at all? And I tend to see if that's, I try and look for ways in which a team has fitted similar style players to myself into their team. So as I said, Tyrone and Mayo both play with huge athleticism, huge energy, for hugely long periods of the game. So I'd be looking at their, taller, kind of not maybe more aerobic, less explosive players, and I'm looking at them and wondering, trying to see how are they fitting into the game plan, and what roles does their team manager have for them within that game plan, and I almost use it as a defense mechanism to tell me that I'm still able to play at this level. If you see a guy with similar physical attributes to you and they're still doing okay in a really high intensity game style, then I'm telling myself, right, I can still do it if they can still do it. So from a selfish point of view, that's what I'm looking at. And then outside of that, not a whole lot. I just try and enjoy the games for what they are.
Okay, brilliant. Last year you sent in a really good skills challenge. I still haven't mastered it off both feet, but when you're training by yourself, how do you structure your training and your kicking practice, and what are you actually really looking to improve before next season?
For training, but we got a lot of practice training by ourselves recently. So if it's a skills based session, I usually, because I'm like one of the options for free taking, a lot further down the line than it used to be, but I'll always top up with a free taking session where I usually have 10 areas between the goal and the 45. So I'll have 4 lines, 3 balls on each line, and then 1 ball on the 45. And I'll do a challenge where I can't move on from one spot until I've scored from that spot. And that's a nice little free taking what I do. And then after that, if I don't have a partner with me and I want to practice some kick passing, I usually just use the backstop behind the goal, the net, and I'll just pick a number of, say, I'll pick, maybe I'm going to do 10 passes with the inside of the right foot, 10 passes inside the left, 10 front on, 10 at the outside, and I'll just experiment basically with different ways of striking the ball, both standing still and on the run, and just using the back net as a stop kind of thing. And then usually you do a little bit of shooting on the run as well, where if I'll either do a set of 10 shots, 5 on each leg, gathering the ball facing away from the goal, usually with a bit of a kind of a change of direction run in between to make it a bit realistic. And then I'll do the same 10 shots, 5 and 5, coming onto a ball heading towards goal. And I usually be keeping a track of how many I've scored. And then the next time I'm training, make sure I'm at least hitting that same kind of target again. So that would be, the skill sessions I kind of do myself. But they're fairly straightforward. There's nothing crazy in them in that regard.
How often would you do a skill session, let's say, in season versus the off season?
In season, very, very rarely now. Again, these days there's such a. I used to be doing them all the time, but then with I don't know if it's the case, but I would have been picking up various kind of muscle strains, and physios were always claiming it was load related, and that I wasn't allowing enough recovery time. So an easy thing to knock on the head would have been the extra skills session. So from a training load point of view, it's probably you don't want to be overdoing it, because you're getting plenty of it, skills work in your training sessions naturally. So I usually, if I want to focus on some specific skills work in season, I do it for 20 minutes or half an hour before training, or 20 minutes, half an hour after training, and try and get it all done in the one night.
For any of the younger listeners that want to be an inter-county footballer and be at elite level like yourself, could you put together a 3-point checklist of what it takes to be an inter-county footballer?
Yeah, number one would be have an end goal in mind. I think whatever that goal is, keep that as your motivation for everything you do. I think that'll help on the days when you don't want to go training, and on the days when weather is terrible, and then you ask yourself, what do I want to achieve? And then when you realize what it is, it helps to motivate you to get out there and train. The second thing I think is always to try and be the hardest working player or in your team, or the working person in your environment. Don't let it be said about you that you're lazy. I think I always find that to be a big insult if someone suggested that about me. So I try and always make that not the case. And then the last thing is, you don't be afraid to express yourself. So you practice all these skills for a reason, not just to achieve your end goal, but also to show what you're capable of and to enjoy what you're doing. So you practice those skills to try and do them in a match situation and training situation. So if you feel that opportunity arises, always back yourself and believe in your own ability to do it. So that'd be my little checklist, I think.
Brilliant. Would you rather score the winning point or make the winning block?
That's cracker, yeah. Because there's a famous block that I never ever forget. It probably would be more remembered. I'd probably rather get the block. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say 2 or 3 years ago I would have said the point, but nowadays I think the block would be. Yeah, I'd rather get the block.
So far in your career, what's been the biggest lesson you've learned from sport?
Biggest lesson is time goes by quickly, so make the most of every single season that you're playing. As I was saying, if you allow a period of time to happen where you're going through the motions and you're happy to have a mediocre season, you'll definitely regret it in years to come. So make the absolute most of every season that you're playing. That'd be the biggest lesson I've learned.
Speaking of seasons, new management are in, looking towards next year. What's the goal for yourself personally, and where do you think you can go with Kildare?
Personally, it's to try and impress the new management enough that I'm maintaining a position as a starting player. That pre-season will be so important in that regard. I'm really looking forward to that, and also to try and maintain a level of fitness that that stops me from missing games due to injury.
Mm-hmm.
And then personally, Kildare have an absolutely huge year ahead of them in Division 1. I've had experience of getting promoted to Division 1 and then going straight back down the following year. So I think as a team, our main goal will be not just to have the performances which we had in 2018, but also to consolidate those performances with some results and try and maintain our spot in Division 1.
Fantastic. So I'm going to move on to the sideline 7. It's the same 7 questions at the end of every episode. It's kind of a thought-provoking round, but you can take it whatever way you want. Question 1, what is your favourite quote?
Favourite quote? I used to have a good one. My favourite quote, this could be in relation to anything.
Anything you want, yeah. It doesn't have to be sport, it can be whatever.
Do you watch Ted Lasso?
No. Sorry.
Right, it's a great show. That was recently out about a guy, an American football coach who comes over and coaches a soccer team. It's very funny, but he's inspirational anyway. He said, "Don't let fear of doing something stop you from doing something you can." That's my favorite quote.
Are you a big quotes fan?
I write them down, but I never remember them off the top of my head. They're in like a bank in my notes on my phone. But
I'm the same as you.
Yeah.
Second question: best sporting event you've been to?
All Ireland final. Yeah. It's still the best. I know nothing gets gets you energized as much as a tight All Ireland final. Like I've been to the drawn Kerry Dublin match, been to couple of Dublin Mayo matches, and then the one this year as well. They're always unbelievable.
Is there any particular sporting event on your bucket list?
AFL Grand Final.
Okay,
Definitely.
very good. Question 3, biggest setback or challenge so far in your career, and how did you react to
it? Probably getting, I suppose, rejected by Charlton in my second year. And I didn't react very well. I kind of threw the toys out of the pram for 6 months and needed a stern talking to from my dad. But after that, I reacted okay and ended up with a couple of good successful years. So every knockback has its follow-on positive impact.
Brilliant. Your biggest achievement so far, on or off the pitch?
Probably setting up my own business as an athletic therapist. That's up there. And then on the pitch, the 2 county championships I won with Athy. So they're probably the top achievements, I think.
How do you find balancing being an intercounty footballer with running your own business?
It's tricky. It can be tricky in that I probably don't devote the time to my business as much as I should because of the intercounty demands, especially with the evening times would be normally a prime times for physio, and I don't really have those evenings to devote to that. But in on the other side of it, being in charge of your own hours can be very helpful. That I'm never stuck for, if I have to switch an appointment around or switch a couple of days around, at least I don't have to go begging my boss to do that. I can kind of do it myself. So it has benefits as well as negatives.
Brilliant. Looking back, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
So much advice I could give there. Don't go through the motions. Yeah, don't let yourself get comfortable. Because comfort is the enemy of progress, definitely. So that's what I tell myself.
Brilliant. Who would be your dream dinner guest and why? And you can pick a few here. You don't have to just pick one.
Yeah, Roy Keane he's always been he would have been my hero growing up. And now for different reasons, he just seems like he's absolutely great crack with some fantastic opinions. So definitely him. There is a guy in Aussie Rules called Ben Cousins. He's well retired now, but there's a super documentary about him called Such is Life. He's had a really interesting life. And anyone else in particular? No, I'll just go with those 2, I think.
Very good. Final question before I let you go. If your life was a book, what chapter would this be called?
Hitting his prime. Try and look at it positively.
Brilliant. So we've big things.
Yeah, that's
we've big things to expect now. Yeah,
that's it.
Exactly. Yeah. Kevin, thanks so much for coming on. I really enjoyed that.
No worries.
A massive thank you to Kevin for joining me in the podcast today. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, in particular the practical tips he gave surrounding goal setting, keeping himself focused, and so much more. If you did enjoy the conversation or you did take something away from it, please do let me know over on Instagram or Twitter at The Sideline Live, and I'd really appreciate if you could leave a rating and a review, as it does help the show grow. Thanks as always for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one.